We're just about ready to begin. If everyone would please take their seats. Good morning, everyone. We're going to try this again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Grace.
Excellent work. I am Grace Crunican. I'm the new general manager of the Bay Area Transportation. What is it? Bay Area BART. Yeah, that one. And I'm delighted to be here at Rail Volution. I think I've maybe missed one in the 17 years we've been meeting. And so it's delightful today to have such a wonderful panel we have in front of us. Before we begin, though, I would like to talk about a couple housekeeping items that we need to do. One is that I want to go over the schedule that's going to happen here. We're going to start off with our program, and I want you to listen carefully to what the speakers have to say, because we will have a few minutes in the end for some question and answer, and we will have some mics available for those question and answer. And I can't see out there to see if they're in the audience, or do we have a roving mic, Adam? They're in the middle. So if you'd form a line if you have some questions, or just raise your hand and be close to a mic, I'd be delighted to call on you. Today, following the plenary session, we will repeat the same schedule as yesterday with a coffee break at 10 a.m. and a coffee break until 10 a.m., and then we'll have some workshops. And after the workshops, there'll be a bagged lunch in the trade show to bring the noontime networking opportunities to you, and it's a chance for you to both to see the trade show and meet the wonderful people that are here and have a chat. Our workshops are located on the lobby level and downstairs adjacent to the trade show. If you're looking for guidance on how to navigate a visit to the Hill, stop by the Transportation for America's table at the trade show for some helpful hints. They'll help guide you. Across from the bookstore in the lobby, take a few minutes to look over the Brunel Award displays, showcasing projects that promote quality, customer-oriented, and sustainable Rail Volution-like things. This year, Rail Volution piloted a mentor-mentee program that was organized by the new revolutionaries. These are our emerging professionals. And last night they had, was it last night or the night before? They had a film fest at the Carnegie Institution that I understand was a big success. They didn't consider me an emerging professional, so that's good news for BART, but I wasn't able to attend. We hope that you enjoyed those events. How many people made it to the film fest? Oh, good showing. Nice job. So, how many of you maybe had a good time yesterday? Okay, that's good. That's good. We learned about the tough environment we're in with Chris Lineberger and Manuel Pastor yesterday. I think what I took away from that event is that we need to be committed for the long haul, for the long vision. In America the Beautiful, those alabaster cities that are gleaming with undimmed by human tears is a goal of revolutionaries to make our communities livable and to have the human relations that we all enjoy flow, and to support diversity in our country, and to make sure that that diversity that is represented by our country can be housed in these communities, nourished and can flourish. So a lot of what we're about here is the long run, and some of the presentations that we've seen at the workshops, when you see a little snippet of success, I'm hoping at today's workshops people let you know how hard it was to get there, because some of us have been at this for a very long time, and we have before us 3 very dedicated public servants that have been swinging hard on these issues throughout their entire career. That effort is one that has made our country strong, and I think has provided us guidance for how we interact with each other and the support that we need to give each other to make it through the tough battles. Before I introduce these great patriots up here that have served us so well, I want to make sure you're ready for this program, so if everyone would please stand up. At the end of in a couple of months, Bill will be retiring. Secretary LaHood has announced that he will not be serving as Secretary of Transportation, and Earl Blumenauer has been with us for a long time, and we're going to have all of them around for a long time. But just to show how much we love them, we're going to thank them in advance with a little round of America the Beautiful. All right? Just the first verse, okay? So here we go. I'm going to step away from the mics just to save all your ears.
Oh, you evil for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plains. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Good job.
So we're going to now get straight to the speakers here. Thank you for warming up. Our first speaker is going to be Earl Blumenauer, someone you may have heard of. But what you may not know is that Earl started life when he was in his emerging professional world in the early 70s. A lot of people were recovering from the 60s in the early 70s, but not Earl. Earl worked his way up in his 20s in the Oregon legislature to be chairman of the House Revenue and School Finance Committee. He's the youngest chair that they've ever had, still, today. He also has served Oregon as a county commissioner for Multnomah County and as the city commissioner for the city of Portland. He's been at this for a very long time, and if you've ever had a meeting with Earl in the morning, you really never know where you stand. And I've had breakfast with him at 7 and thought I was special to get that time with him, only to find out later that he'd had a 5 o'clock jog for 7 miles with one guy, and at 6 o'clock he had another 4-mile jog with somebody, and I was sort of third on his list, show up. So he is that long-distance runner we've been talking about. He's been at this for a very long time. Please welcome our own energy, ball of energy here, Earl Blumenauer.
Grace Crunican has never been third on my list. Good job on the name of the new agency, Grace. This is a woman who used to make things happen at FTA. Kind of wonder about your applications back then, don't you? Thank you. Thank you, Grace, for getting us started. You never know quite what to expect with Grace. But one of the things you should know is that part of the reason we are here today is because of Grace and our partnership back at the City of Portland. She had a title at the time that was Deputy Director, but actually she was a force unparalleled to try and make things happen. And one of them was this effort to bring people together like Rail Volution. And Grace did as much as anybody to make sure that this tradition started, and it is still going today. She made some allusion to challenges in Washington, D.C. Actually, the question I have been asked most often at the conference so far is, you're still doing this? How can you stand it? Isn't it weird? The truth is that I am still doing it. It is somewhat surreal at times. But the reason is right here in this room. The energy, the hope, the accomplishment that is palpable here is something I will tell you that makes me want to go to work every day. And it's something that I hope that you feel very, very good about. You are what is, I think, driving and animating this effort around the country. It is an honor to be here with Bill Millar and Ray LaHood, and in a few moments Grace is allowing me to introduce them, and so I'm going to talk more about them. But talking about hope, accomplishment, and energy, these two gentlemen epitomize it for our movement. The conference is going through transitions. We're having a new executive director. Dan Bartholomew is somewhere. Dan is here. We've had some stalwarts of the conference who are cycling on. Steve Dodderer thinks he's going to fade into the background a little bit, somebody who's been with us from the outset. Lavinia's retiring. I mean, there's all sorts. We've got a new executive director, or CEO of APTA coming in. This is a time of change in our movement, but part of what is a constant is our goals, our objectives, and the progress that we are committed to here. It is in thinking about how to give the hardest speech I give every year, because so many of you have been a part of this from the beginning. You've heard me, and making sure that I don't bore you and that I am relevant and I don't make a mistake is really hard. But this year, I must say, as I'm reviewing my notes, I'm thinking about where we are, I was reminded of Lincoln's second inaugural address. You remember it? There is less, sure you do, it was March 4th, 1865. It's inscribed here in the Capitol. Our secretary from the land of Lincoln. For his second inaugural address, Lincoln began saying, "There is less occasion for an extended address than there was at the first. The progress upon all else chiefly depends is as well known to the public as to myself, and it is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory to all. With high hope for the future, no prediction in this regard, it is ventured." Well, that's exactly how I feel about the struggle for livable communities. You know the progress. It is remarkable. And the only reason I won't venture a prediction, at least in the short run, is that while you are doing your job, Washington is failing you. And make no mistake, I'm not talking about Ray LaHood. I'm talking about a political process on Capitol Hill that is broken, what times appears to be a dysfunctional Senate, and a House that is functional but out of control. While the livable communities and job-creating priorities of the Obama administration offer us all hope, and people in this room have been able to take advantage of unparalleled opportunities, the partnership between Secretary LaHood, between Secretary Donovan, Administrator Lisa Jackson, for this Livable Communities Initiative, which was our dream for 20 years. They are under assault. You need to appreciate the environment in which the Secretary finds himself. You may have noticed that there are basically two fundamental world views that are clashing and being played out daily on Capitol Hill. In one, there are a group of people who passionately believe that we are on the verge of becoming Greece, that we are approaching collapse because we spent too much, we borrowed too much, we regulated too much, and that the government meltdown and subsequent recovery effort actually made it worse. They're willing to risk default on the national debt or national upset in order to achieve their direction of shrinking, deregulating, scaling down, and I would say turning back. There's another group that says we're not about to be Greece, that the near meltdown was not caused by too much regulation, but that there was no adult supervision of the cowboys on Wall Street, that the bailout didn't make it worse, it helped us avoid a depression, and if anything, it wasn't that it was too large, but that it would have been better if it had greater dimension. It's not a problem of borrowing too much, but spending too little on many of the right things. And slashing spending and cutting taxes for an economy already at risk at a time of record corporate profits is not only unjustified, but it's unconscionable, reckless, and irresponsible. There's not a lot of overlap between those two worldviews. They are held by people who are sincere and passionate and committed. But I think there is, in fact, a glimmer of hope. I look at what's happening with the group of 12 legislators, the super committee. But I will tell you that the brightest ray of hope is found here in this room. That people understand that rebuilding and renewing America is the fastest way to put people to work and revitalize the economy. And that people brought together by a common agenda that isn't red state, blue state, purple state. It's not conservative or liberal. It has nothing to do with geography or even large communities or small. But a collective vision that we can put the pieces together in a more thoughtful way and squeeze more value out of the system. Nowhere is that more vividly on display than in metropolitan Washington, D.C. Some of you were here in 1997 when we had our first Rail Volution in the district. And it was a much different city and a much different region at that time. And we were not pointing to Washington, D.C. as a model for the country at that time. But today, those of you who've been a part of the mobile workshops, watching the revitalization of the neighborhoods, the bike share, the streetcar, what's happening in adjacent jurisdictions, in one of the most difficult regions in the country to come together, it's got to make you feel optimistic about the future. But it's not just in Washington. Next year, we go back to Los Angeles, and we are going to be able to showcase a renaissance in what was at one point the capital of America's car culture and suburbanization and Disneyland. And there's a Disneyland of a different nature taking place there in terms of livability. But it's in Salt Lake City when you talk about a renaissance and putting all these pieces together. And what's going on in Charlotte and Little Rock and Dallas, Oklahoma City. Around this room, we have people who are demonstrating the power of these principles and bringing interesting, diverse coalitions together to revitalize their communities. Now, the Secretary has long been in partnership with my old seatmate on Ways and Means, Rahm Emanuel. In Chicago, I think all of you ought to have a Chicago agenda. There's not going to be any more dynamic mayor any place in the country than Rahm Emanuel over the next 3.5 years in office there. The strategic partnership with Gabe Klein, with the work of the region, where Mayor Daley, I don't think, really got credit for what he did bringing the region together. Stuff's happening in an exciting way. And if any of you missed Tom Friedman's column Sunday morning about Rahm and his approach to breaking eggs, making omelets, squeezing more value, and putting into place ideas that had long been thought about. Chicago was one of the real centerpieces intellectually for land use planning, transportation, for a century. But politics made it hard to do some of the things that people wanted to do. And Mayor Emanuel is showing how to push past maybe some of the traditional politics and really doing extraordinary things in Chicago. And that is what we need your help to do on the federal level. Because if the book I write a little bit on every single morning has a working title, it doesn't have to be this hard. The problems, we have real problems in this country. We have to change spending trajectory. We have to extract more value. But this is entirely within our capacity if we're willing to move past politics as usual. The problem with health care is not that we don't spend enough. We don't spend it as smart as we should. You know it. I know it. The President's leadership on health care put in place, not a perfect bill, I'd give it a B-, but embedded in that legislation is every single one of the reform strategies that at one point were bipartisan and accepted. And our task is not to pour sand in the gears, but to accelerate it and reward value over volume. We can do this. It's time for an agricultural policy for our century that is not for the largest agribusinesses, but for America's farmers and ranchers to help them do their work and to provide nutrition for our children rather than supersizing them, protecting the environment and protecting the taxpayer. And we know what to do. We have to get past the traditional politics to be able to accomplish it. I will stop going through the litany because you're aware of so much of this in areas of education and retrenchment of defense. America has the resources that need to be redirected. And your willingness to help us refine these strategies on rebuilding and renewing America, getting it right in terms of transportation in your community, lobbying for a transportation policy and reauthorization that is right-sized, dealing not just with the budget deficit, but with the infrastructure deficit, and challenging people in Congress to provide the resources that America needs. The last two gas taxes that were increased were part of deficit reduction strategies. 1982 with Ronald Reagan, who could accept a 5-cent a gallon increase, back when that was real money. Bill Clinton in 1993. We've got a super committee that is meeting and looking. They had recommendations from 2 presidential commissions and with the Simpson-Bowles Commission to include increasing the gas tax as a part of this. It's something that Secretary LaHood can't do, but it is something that you can help us punch through, create the framework. You are doing it in communities across the country. 3/4 of the local initiatives are successful for park, open space, transit. States are moving forward with new resources in this difficult economy, difficult climate. This is all about hearing the discontent in the country, the apprehension, the concern, and channeling it towards a productive end. And there is no more productive end than rebuilding and renewing this country. This is the formula to rebuild and renew America, revitalize our economy, create livable communities where all our families are safer, healthier, and more economically secure. And with your help, I'm confident that we can do it.